I'm Marjory Gibney, and I was Marjory Smith when I was born. And I was born in Calgary, but my parents were living at Seavey at that time, so I consider that I was born in Seavey. I lived there from the very beginning. And my parents, my dad was born, Bob Smith was born in Banff, so he's been in the valley for a long time. And he started working for TransAlta because his dad worked for Calgary Power, as it was at the time, and he was just looking for a job to fill in until he got called up to the Navy during the Second World War. Only the war ended before he got called up, and he just sort of fell into staying in Seavey. And my mom was from Olds, and after the war was working at Port Radium up north, and she would come south and work in Banff for the summers when she was teaching up there. And so she met my dad in Banff, and they got married in 1953, and so both of them lived in Seavey from that time on. And I was born in 1955, and my folks lived in one of the little, what we called the cottage duplexes at that time. But then they moved into what was the big two-story duplex in Seavey, and that's where I grew up pretty much. I lived there for 19 years. So,
I'm Pat Ritchie, born Pat Moore in 1942. Again, like Marge, I was born in Calgary, but resided in Seavey from when I was born until I went to university in Edmonton. Got married in 1963. Ended up being principal at one of the schools in Canmore, the Elizabeth Rummel School, but also being principal at the CB school as well at the time when we decided we had to close it due to decreased enrollment. My brother and I attended the little one-room CB school for, in my case, 9 years, my brother's case 9 years, but in later dates, the school ended up just being from grade 1 to grade 6. Now, an interesting fact is my mom and dad got married in 1940 and moved into CB. My mom had been born in Cochrane, but as a young person, grade 5, grade 6, they had lived in CB with her parents. Her dad, my grandfather, worked on the Horseshoe Dam when it was being built, and actually was on site when the first power was turned on from the Horseshoe Dam to the city of Calgary, providing power for the Calgary, and that was in 1911. So my mom was in school from grade 5 and grade 6 in the little CB school. She'd ride horseback from the house in Horseshoe up into the CB school, and that's kind of interesting. When she and Dad got married in 1940, she ended up playing for every Christmas concert that we had as students at the school, and for many years after. When they retired in either 78 or 79, she still traveled back to play for the teachers and the students in the little CB school, which was kind of interesting. Her name was Dolly Moore. My dad was Alistair Moore. My grandfather, my mother's dad, was Robert Armstead.
My name is Marilyn Hogarth, was Crowder. I was born in Canmore, and at that time my mom and dad were living at the Ghost Dam, Calgary Power, and I think I was probably 7 years old when we moved to CB. I think my mom and dad, when they were first married, lived at CB. My dad comes from the Crow's Nest. He went to SAIT in Calgary and then was hired by Calgary Power, lived at the staff house. My mother grew up in Fairview in northern Alberta, and she came down to CB. Her sister was living here, and she came to help her sister, who was ill, look after the children, and that's how she met my dad. They used to sit on the staff house steps, and my Mom's niece would go through the catalog with my dad, looking at all the girdles and the bras and things that in there. And I went to school at CB till grade 9. My brother and sister both went to school in CB, and then we went to Banff to high school. And then after that, I went to Calgary in nurses training. And from there, after marrying Bill, we lived in Wetaskiwin for a little while and then came back to Exshaw.